y'all, it's Hope at Crafty Hope and welcome. I am working on the June 4-core challenge from Ina Salisbury. I will link to Ina's channel where she kind of explains her 4-core challenge, but basically it is a mixed media challenge in which you need to use 4 core ingredients. So, and those change every month. She announces it when she shows what she made for the previous month, and she'll announce what the next month's challenge is. So in her May video, which was at the beginning of June, she announced what June's challenge was going to be. I'll link to that. She does a much better job of explaining what the ingredients are, but I'm going to tell you my interpretation of them maybe. So the first thing is she's got a theme for the month, which is exploring relationships and connections. So for me, I kept going around and around about the idea of sisters or friends or something like that, and I found this picture. It's from the Tim Holtz paper dolls of these 3 ladies hold on to each other. They're connected, and to me they're sisters. Just look at them. So I've decided I'm going to use these ladies for my relationship. We're to use violet or purple somehow in there, and I remembered I have this Art Alchemy Antique Brilliance wax and amethyst that I'll probably try to bring in somehow. Maybe I might go somewhere else. We need to include rocks or stones. I think I'm going to use these texture pebbles somehow, and then of course paint them and put this on top. And then we have to include a small container that somehow has the relationship or connection within it. And then we submit our photos. We're going to have 2 photos, one where the relationship is inside the container and one where it's outside the container. So I'm going to use this glass jar. Ina showed a glass jar in her video, and I immediately was like, ooh, glass jars. So I'm going to use this glass jar. I pulled together another couple things. I've got another one of these boxes with the label on it from the Dollar Tree. This is a smaller version than what I used last month, because last month I used a larger one of these boxes for Ina's challenge. And what else have I got? I've got a sheet where I've written down sisters a couple different ways. I've got some other pictures of people I think are sisters. I've got some stickers that have some great texture from the Dollar Tree, and I've got a mold from this is a resin mold for UV resin that I think I'm going to somehow put my anyway, I think I'm going to put my labels in them somehow, maybe, and then put that in the jar. So that was a long explanation, but I wanted you to know where my kind of thought process is to start this. It could go cattywampus and sideways, and something else might happen, and we'll see. All right, so here we go. This is where I started. There are a lot of little steps. Nothing about this is hard or complicated. It was just a lot of little steps that explains the length there. So first thing I did was go ahead and get some 3D gloss gel. This is like a gel medium, so it's like a thick adhesive that I am sticking in there. Tacky glue might have worked even better or just as well, and I am putting it at all those, like the back corners, basically along the back edge there, just shoving it in there. I wasn't trying to be precise or exact about it because I'm going to put my little pebbles in there, and I just kind of want them in those, you know, in the recesses there to give a little texture to this. So I'm just going to, yep, just like that, throw those pebbles in there, move them around like they are glitter, and pour them back into the loose ones back into the container. So this was probably not the best way to do these pebbles. I will tell you that now, because as I painted them later and did other things, they kept coming loose. I mean, I've got plenty that are well adhered. You'll see the pictures at the end. But yeah, I don't know that that was the best way to do this, but I've got my stones or rocks kind of thrown in here already. So I've got this sticker from the Dollar Tree. Y'all, a lot of these things for this came from the Dollar Tree. So I've got this heart sticker. I thought that was perfect for sisters, but I wanted to make sure it was well stuck on. So I grabbed some E6000 and I am putting that right in the middle of my box, just like that, because, you know, sisters and hearts and love and all of that is perfect. So I went over to my printout that says Sisters Forever, and I'm cutting the words out individually here. Trying, y'all, I've said this in many videos, I can't cut a straight line, so I'm trying to get this as straight as possible. Forever's a little bit longer, so I'm making sure it's there. And I'm looking at these, making sure that the first letter is on the same side on them, so they're not, one's not upside down from the other. And then I'm just going to glue them together with an Uhu glue stick. And once I get them together, I'll trim them down just a little bit more. And then I will seal them with some Mod Podge. Now I'm going to use, I think, Mod Podge Shiny for this one, but it doesn't really matter. I just wanted to seal that. Actually, no, that's not what I'm going to do next. I didn't want these to be strictly white, so I've got some Distress ink in old paper that I am aging this a little bit there. And I'm going to do it both sides, and once it is once it is colored, then I'll seal it with the Mod Podge. So yeah, and I do the sealing because resin will seep into your papers and do funky things to it. So I just wanted to make sure that my paper was protected from going transparent. So yeah, here's the Mod Podge. I'm just working on a piece of plastic there. I could have used whatever, but that plastic from the sticker book was sitting right there. So yeah. And so I'm cutting both sides pretty well, and I'm going to leave that to dry for just a minute. And I think then I'm going to pull out my UV resin. So I'm starting with putting a coating of the UV resin in the bottom of the shape I've picked out. Now this shape is a connector, which means that it would have loops on both ends, but because the way this mold is designed, I was able to keep it going into the second loop. So I'm being really careful about how much resin I put in there. And so I cured it. It takes like less than a minute to cure that. And then I'm sticking in my Sisters Forever little paper thing. Now I wish I had glued that down a little bit better because I do get some bubbles in here. Now I'm putting a second coating here of the resin, spreading it out, again avoiding that bottom loop. And I'll tell you, I went ahead, I think I put 2 coats on here. So I'm not going to show you both coats because it's the same process of putting a little resin in, making sure it covers the whole surface, and then curing it in a UV light. If you have any questions about UV resin, I've got a couple other videos that use it, or you can ask me below. It's it's really fun. You can find it at most of your big box craft stores or online. I'll probably have a link to Amazon to where you can get the supplies for it. It's pretty common. And here I was just trying to make sure that it didn't run into that other loop. So it is cured, it is done, and I am popping it out just like this, and you can see it is cured. I had couple of things I popped off. I don't know if you can see those bubbles on the scissors. I don't mind that so much because this all feels a little aged and grungy, so that was fine. Now I'm working on my jar at this point. I knew I was going to run a piece of wire through the cork in it, and because I was afraid that would pull through the cork, I have got some, what are those things, sequins here to help protect the cork. And so I'm just coloring them with a couple of shades of alcohol inks. One's a metallic and one's just a brown, just to get kind of a brassy color like what's on the little tag thing on the box. That's all I was doing. And once those are dry, I've got some brass wire here, and I am making a wrapped loop. I will put a link up here in the upper right to how to make a wrapped loop. It's one of my favorite jewelry making processes, but this is some 22 gauge wire, and I've made my wrapped loop. And then I'm going to grab a needle real quick. Oh, actually, I'm going to thread on 2 of those sequins that we altered. And I'm going to grab a needle to kind of poke like a pilot hole through, because I was afraid with the wire, it bends a little bit. It might not go super straight without having a, like I said, a preliminary hole. So I'm going to do that a couple times to make sure that there's, an opening in there. And now I'm going to push my wire through, and at the opposite side, I'm going to go ahead and put a couple more of those sequins. Again, this is just to protect that cork, because cork is such a soft surface. I was afraid if somebody pulled that cork out too hard, it would pull the wire through or damage it in some way. So I'm just being super safe and precautionary. So here's my second wrap loop, which is all about just bending the wire, making a loop, and then wrapping the wire underneath that loop. That's it. And then you trim it and tuck any excess wire. So super easy. All right, so that part is done. Now I'm going to take a jump ring and connect the inside loop that I made to my little charm. And y'all, I end up changing that loop. That jump ring was far too big. I went down a size in jump rings later. But I started with this because it just wasn't moving in the jar as much as I wanted. So yeah, I'll change it later. And then I've got a little bit of wire, and I'm just going to cut it. Well, first I'm going to connect it. I'm going to get another jump ring, and with jump rings, you twist them open. So you'll see I grab it on either side and I twist. I'm not pulling it apart. And I will connect it to one end of my chain eventually, connect that to that outside loop. And then I'm going to take some pretty big pliers and cut that chain there, just like that. So we've got like a pull to pull that out. And I decided somewhere in here that I didn't want my outside of my glass to be so visible and you could see exactly what it said inside. I wanted the charm inside to have a bigger reveal so that you would have to pull it out. So I start by creating this little phrase that says often friends. And the inside will say sisters forever. Now, y'all, I had a sister. I lost my sister, and this project's close to my heart because I miss my sister, but we will always be sisters, no matter that she's gone. But we did not get along for years and years and years, and that's why this phrase is important to me, because you're not always friends when you're sisters. You will fight, you will bicker, but you will forever be sisters, no matter what. So this phrase, often friends, some people say, you're always my sister and forever my friend and things like that. But no, sisters are not always friends. So I am, this is what I'm thinking for these ladies. I'm sure at some point they had their own little fights. So I altered that again with the old paper distress ink, and I'm using some more Mod Podge. This, I believe, is the shiny, and I can't remember why I used it. And I'm just using it to glue it onto the front. And y'all, I'm being real precious here and wiping off the Mod Podge because I was thinking, oh, I don't want it to show. Yeah, that's not going to matter in a minute, because as I add the second one, I start thinking, well, you can still see straight through this jar. It's not, this phrase is over it, but it's not really covering it up enough. So as I'm applying this, I start to go ahead and just say, oh, you know what? I think adding Mod Podge to a jar will make it kind of frosted like. And so I'd go ahead and cover this whole jar. I'll go ahead and tell you that with this gloss Mod Podge, it didn't, well, you'll see in a little bit when it dries, it's not as frosty as I want. So I'll continue to alter it here as we go along in this project. So I've got this all coated. I put it to the side. And then I'm coming back in with the Mod Podge matte here. So I'm going to do one more coating of it to see if that'll, I don't know, like I said, frost it a little bit more. And it does an okay job. It's not as great as I want. So you can kind of see where the Mod Podge shiny kind of blurred it a little, but it's not exactly as I want. All right, now that I let those beads sit there for at least 24 hours drying with that gloss gel. So I took a paintbrush and knocked out any more loose ones, but they're going to continue throughout this process to be loose. So it's just, I should have done a better job with this.
Now I'm taping off the edges of this with just masking tape. I'm showing you the first one that I'm doing, and I'll come back, not come back, but off camera I do all 4 sides of this just to tape the edges because I don't want to get the black gesso that I'm using here all over the front of this. And I'm going in and I'm painting this. Now I probably should have just taped the whole box on the outside and spray painted this, because as those beads start falling off, I'm finding it harder and harder to get into all the nooks and crannies of this. It's not a huge deal once I put some of the other stuff down, but to fix where it didn't get in some places, I'm using this it's a Heidi Swap ink spray thing. I probably just could have used some black ink, but I decided to try the spray, and this is kind of a glossy spray, so I'll come back after I spray this and let it dry. I'll come back in with the gesso to kind of push back some of the shiny. So you see the shiny in there? Yeah. So I'm coming back with my gesso and doing another coat. And again, those beads are coming off, those pebbles. Those are my stones. I keep saying beads because I'm still working with beads. All right, so back to the jar while my gesso is drying. I have got a couple, I think that's what, ginger and caramel, couple colors of alcohol ink that I'm going to use to color this jar a little bit. I tried using both water and my paper towel to kind of move the alcohol ink around. It didn't really work. I finally used a little bit of alcohol too. That you won't see on here, but it wasn't a big deal. I could have just used more of the alcohol ink. I didn't really need the alcohol to move it around. So I'm putting down one color in just kind of spots, and then I'll pull the other color in to kind of fill it out. I wanted it to be like not consistently one color, but I think in the end you don't really see that I use 2 different inks, so it's not completely necessary. It's just one of those things. I wanted to try all the things with this. I kept reminding myself that if something didn't work, most of these supplies came from the Dollar Tree and I could get more. All right, so I've got that wax and I'm coming in with it now that everything is dry. And I had to wait a while, y'all, see more of those pebbles are coming out. I had to wait a while for that gesso to dry and that ink because it was way down in those beads and I was coming up with ink at certain times with this. So I'm going in with this and this fairly fluffy brush, trying not to knock off any more of those beads, but I keep doing it. And I'm going to do all of the bead area as well as over my heart and even in the background. This is my purple for the 4-core challenge. So I'm going to make sure I get as much as I can purple. The sides I did not bother with unless there were the pebbles on there. But the whole like back of it got the purple treatment, the amethyst. I think it's Amethyst Magic. I'll have a link to it if I can find it on Amazon. And y'all, if you do click any of my material links below, I do get a small portion of it, but there's no extra cost to you. I should let y'all know that more often. All right, so I did all that and then decided it just wasn't quite enough for me. I needed more shine to it. So I go over with this artsy, I don't even know what the color is, like bronze maybe, and go over that. But it doesn't take away the purple. You can still see the purple in there. So it just gives it more metallic to go with some of the other metallics that I've got going on with the box. Gosh, I was really bad with those pebbles. You can see I keep having to pull them off my brush. All right, so now I'm just marking how big that opening is there because I want to protect the inside of my box now that I've done all of these things. So I'm cutting this in and putting it inside, and I'm going to go ahead and take off the masking tape because this next thing I don't mind if it gets on the front edge. Yeah. So I'm taking my masking tape off. I have found with these little boxes that the front edges of that MDF, I don't like how they look when they're painted. And so I was just avoiding having to paint it, really. All right, so now I have one of my favorite mixed media things, and it is instant coffee. So I mix it up in this little yogurt cup. So I've put some in there, some of the crystals, and I'm adding some water. And then I'll mix it up with the paintbrush, and I'm creating a splatter, basically, that's how I'm altering the outside of this box, and that's all I'm going to do. So on here, I've just got a really wet paintbrush and some of that coffee, and I am splattering it. I'm just doing 2 sides in the video here because I let it dry for about a day, and I came back and I did the other 2 sides. So, yeah. So here are all 4 sides done. And the top of it, you can see it ran a little because of the way I had it placed. I don't mind that. It adds to the age and the distress. I am okay with that. So it's time to start getting my ladies situated in there. I'm going to have them sit on 2 of these little wood cubes. They're from also the Dollar Tree. So I'm trying to figure out the placement of them so that they can go back right where they were once I get them gessoed. So I've got them in there. And I'm going to pull in a white pen just to help me mark things once I get decided. Yeah, I'm thinking, what can I use? So here's a white pen where I'm marking where the bottoms of where they are, and then I'm marking which cube is which cube. So I know, because they're not all really uniform in size. So I want to make sure I'm putting the right one back in the right place. Just like that. So I'm going to pull those out and paint just the sides, not the top and the bottom, because that doesn't matter. That won't be seen. Stuff will be glued to them. So I'm going to just paint the sides of them with my black gesso. And I'm going to show you more of this than you really need to see because it's not a big deal. It's just painting with black gesso. Y'all, I know I'm showing y'all just little snippets of this whole video, and I apologize if I have shown too much or not enough or whatever. If you have questions, like I think I've already said this, let me know. Alright, so I created a template for my little tag thing on the top and decided that the word I wanted to put in it is connection, since this whole project was about exploring connections and relationships. And like I said, those 3 ladies are definitely connected. In a lot of ways. So they're connected, holding each other in the picture. I've got that chain that's also going to be like connected to them and connected to the jar. And so it's a lot of connection going on. So that was what I decided to put on this piece of paper that I just printed out on my computer. It's the backing, all of that is just done on the computer. I did it in a spreadsheet and made sure that the cell itself was black with the white writing. And I found that when I crumple that up, it gives this really great worn feel to it. So I did that, crumpled it up, glued it onto a piece of cardstock just so it would be a little more sturdy. And now I'm going to cut it down to the size of that template I created. So there was a lot of figuring on this, but it really was something simple. And so I'll try to fit it in the little sleeve there, and it's, I'll get it till it goes and cut it a little bit more. Yeah. All just a little bit of figuring out. So that's in there, and I'm not gluing it or sealing it or anything. And I guess once that's in there, I am finally gluing down my I don't know how this got out of order or why I did it in this order. But I'm gluing down my little boxes. Once those were a little bit dry, I came in with a toothpick and my E6000 so I could glue the chain to the top of that bottom block there because I wanted it connected to something but not anything like obvious. So it's just going to be glued on. And so I'm going to leave all of this to sit and dry for a little bit and make sure nothing's going to move when I come in with my next step, which is, yeah, that's all nice and tight now. And so I'm going to glue my ladies down. And I'm using gravity for a lot of these things. That's why I'm going in stages with this. I want to make sure that gravity holds it in place. So the next thing is put my E6000 on top of my little cubes and then put my ladies down on them. And I'm just making sure nothing moves around. I wanted them, yeah, just like that. And so I'll leave them to dry for a little bit. And now that they're dry, I'm going to glue my jar into place. And all I'm going to do for that is put the E6000 just a little bit on the bottom of the jar and stick it in place and leave it sitting upright like that. So gravity holds it in place. And then I'm going to show you all the final product and how it works. So here it is, all dry. This comes out and you can see where it says friends often, sisters forever. And then it can go right back in there. So I want to thank Ina for this fun challenge. I would not have thought of this otherwise. And encourage you to go check out her videos, and she'll have pictures and links to other people who participate in this fun 4-core challenge. All right, y'all, thank y'all so much for coming by and watching and sitting through all of this. I really, really appreciate it. Have a beautiful day.